I've used this keyboard almost every day for the last 6 months and have mentioned it time and time again here on the channel, for good reason. This is definitely the best pre-built board I've used. It's a 75% layout for $130 that gives you hot swappable switches, a great sound profile right out of the box, and a very unique design. I did want to make some upgrades to make this a little more pleasing to type on and went with a new set of GMK keycaps and some Gateron cream soda switches. Because it actually sounds so good without any mods, I didn't feel the need to swap or lube the stabilizers or mess around in the casing. This board is honestly built quite well. I don't like that it's not fully aluminum, but I guess at this price point that's really not something I should be expecting. The bottom portion of the board is constructed with ABS plastic, and then the top frame is made out of aluminum. Sandwiched between those two layers is the Halo light, which is one of the features that makes this board so much different than any other one you'll find, but I'll talk more about that and the lighting profile in general in just a moment. Even though the casing is a majority plastic, it still does have some heft to it, coming in at just under 1200 grams or about 2 pounds. It's about 1.5 inches at its thickest point, so while not super bulky, this definitely isn't the easiest thing to travel with. While I do wish this case build was a little more premium, similar to what we've seen with the Keychron Q1, Nuphy is still a relatively small brand, but they are quickly growing, and I'm optimistic that further down the road we will see some more premium options from them. For me, this 75% form factor has been perfect to use the board as an all-around daily for both work and gaming. I personally like having the full function row when on Mac to have quick and easy access to media controls whilst having arrow keys in a relatively compact form factor. I do think for most people though, a 65% layout is probably an even better choice, as you still do have the arrow keys but trade the function row for an even more compact design. I have the Halo75 in white, which looks super clean, and aside from the layout differences, the two are essentially the same exact board, so if you like what you see with the 75 but prefer this design, I can also recommend it. But just comparing these two boards with the 96% also from Nuphy, you can see that the Halo75 is a really nice middle ground in terms of the extra keys you get. I'm currently gaming with the Wooting 60HE, which I've really enjoyed and dropped over $300 to do a custom build with, but I still hate the fact that that doesn't have arrow keys just for simple things like quickly fixing a typo, and while I don't plan to develop too much with that board, programming is so much easier having arrow keys. So as I mentioned, probably one of the biggest selling points for a lot of people is just the overall aesthetic of this board and its lighting. Over the years, I have become less and less of an RGB fan. These days, I just stick with a solid color, but if you do want unicorn vomit, this board is going to scratch that itch. There's 3 different lighting zones you can adjust individually: the main backlight, the halo light around the casing, and the side light in the top corner. This additionally can be used as an indicator for caps lock. I have the entire board configured with a yellow color, which in my opinion looks really nice. My keycaps aren't shine through, but the way the light bleeds between each of the keys makes for a subtle but clean aesthetic. Because under the switches on this board there is south-facing LEDs, even with these non-backlight keycaps, it still does look pretty good. One thing to note though is that there might be some interference with certain keycaps, so I would just do a little bit of research before going out and buying them, but on these GMK ones there's not been any issues. One annoying thing though is the halo light is a little off. It's more of a green hue than yellow, so it does throw off the lighting a little bit. Even worse is that the software you can use to configure lighting on here only affects the backlight, it's only on Windows, and half the time it doesn't even open. I really wish it was compatible with QMK or VIA, similar to Keychron and other premium custom-ish boards. That aside, I do really like the look of the black color here, but the downside is it does show scratches and dings a lot easier than the white one. One thing about Nuphy that you'll probably either love or hate is the playful design each of their boards have. The stock keycaps have accented colors, and then there's small things like the colored feed and switches that play into that aesthetic. I can definitely see how in some setups this will stand out really nicely, but in my opinion, I much prefer having a more muted and minimal look, and luckily having swapped out the keycaps, I've mostly been able to achieve that. While there was nothing wrong with the stock PBT keycaps, I knew I wanted to give the board a new look. Scrolling on Drop, I came across these GMK Katakana keycaps and immediately dropped $140 on them. I've been wanting to try ones from GMK just to see if they're worth it, and I actually loved the idea of having Japanese style legends beforehand. These are super unique and really set this board apart from most others that you're going to see online. I'm an okay touch typer, so I don't really find the lack of English legends to be that much of an annoyance for normal typing. However, there are times where it's super difficult for me to figure out where a specific key is, mostly when trying to hit a function key, a specific number, but most often looking for a symbol. The keys themselves feel very smooth and high quality. While they are double shot ABS, the way GMK makes them just feels a lot better than even the most top of the line premium PBT caps. That said, they're no doubt extremely overpriced. There's nothing really special that makes them worth $140, so you really need to love the design of these to be willing to spend all that money. The only thing I don't really like about the set is there aren't many fitting keys for actions like page up down, insert, etc, so I ended up just putting some random ones on each of those that I don't really love the look of. For the spacebar, I decided to use the ghost bar from Nuphy instead of the black one that came with the set because I really like the contrast it gives off. Functionality wise, it's actually a lot less noisy than the stock spacebar or even the one that came with the GMK set. The stabilizers underneath are actually quite good, which was a pleasant surprise, as typically with keyboards around this price range, and oftentimes even higher when dealing with gaming boards, they tend to be very rattly. They provide a consistent, smooth feel across all the large keys that just makes the typing experience a whole lot more enjoyable. The Gateron cream soda switches underneath all the keycaps make for the same effect, but for the entire board. I found these when watching an Instagram reel and instantly fell in love with their stock sound profile. They're pre-looped and I've done nothing additional to them. I honestly just don't even feel the need to. These feel fantastic and are a great choice if you're a fan of linears and just want switches that you can throw into your keyboard and enjoy. They've been a pleasure to type and game with, and I really don't have any complaints with them. In the entire pack of 90 switches I ordered, I had no bent pins that weren't my fault or any inconsistency issues. The switches I had stock with the Halo75 were the Night Breezes, and those at the time were the best linears I had tried. So after swapping both the keycaps and switches, I've honestly been very satisfied with the sound profile and typing experience. I haven't felt the need to make any additional mods. These two upgrades alone have reinvented this board for me. Once I'm finished with my custom mooting board though, I might come back to these switches and lube them up, as I was watching a video on these from Maker Mods who lubed them up and they do sound just a tad bit creamier. While I don't think it's necessary to make any internal additions to the board, there are a few accessories I think may be worth grabbing. A coiled cable is definitely something I recommend picking up if you plan to use the board wired. The black one I use is from Highstar. It's nothing special, but just has a clean and minimal look to it. While I don't plan on opening this case up, for my future keyboard builds, I bought this electric screwdriver purely for aesthetics, but it also works well. It's just $50, which for what you get, I actually think is pretty fair. This board isn't super tall, but I found that after typing or gaming for a few hours, my wrists do start to get really fatigued. I've been using the wrist rest from Nuphy a lot more recently, and the acrylic design looks pretty nice. It does though pick up fingerprints and scratches quite easily, so just beware of that. I typically use a desk mat because it will dampen the sound profile of your board, as well as subtly change the typing feel. What I've noticed after typing on the keyboard straight on the desk is that the sound profile is a little louder, and the switches almost feel like they have a little bit more feedback. One last accessory that I find super useful is this hand air blaster. This helps remove dust in between keys and keep the board looking clean. So the Halo75 for the price is definitely worth picking up if you're a fan of the function row and the arrow keys. It's a bit more premium than most other mechanical keyboards at this price point, and it also gives you the ability to upgrade it into something even nicer down the line. I'm going to have the board along with the keycaps and switches linked down below if you are interested. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll see you next week, but until then, take care.